welcome everybody to the demo of the day. Today we have with us Rakshit, a senior data scientist from the Data Science and AI Elite team at IBM. And we will see something really exciting, which is how you put models into production. Most of the models never go into production. It's well known that it's something really difficult to do. So Rakshit is with us here today to show us live how to do that very quickly. Rakshit, how are you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How are you?
Very good, very good. So show us how we can put models into production.
Sure, man. So you actually raised a good point that most models don't end up being productionalized. Actually, it's said that about 90% of the models don't go into production. So what you're seeing right now is what we call as a development project, which is just an area where you develop your project, your AI or machine learning project. You have all your assets. And typically, what you tend to do in such a project is you just try out different models just to see which is the better model and which is the one that you actually want to end up using. What I did was I created four different models. Typically, you tend to create multiple versions or multiple types of model just to evaluate them and figure out what is the best model for your use. What I did was I created one model using Auto AI, which is a tool within Cloud Pak for Data. I also created multiple other models by writing code using Jupyter Notebook. And in my evaluation, I found this random forest model as the best model, and that's the model which I will actually choose to, deploy and to productionalize. Now, there are many reasons why the model never gets productionalized. One major issue is how difficult it is to actually productionalize. There are like more than 10 different steps one has to take. So it could be anywhere from ensuring the right versions of the packages are packaged, make sure the enough resources are available. You have to containerize it, you have to understand Kubernetes, you have to understand how to write YAML files. All of that is really painful. Sometimes it takes hours or even days to get it ready, and when something fails you don't even know what's happening. Now, I would do all of those steps in a manner of less than 2 minutes by clicking on few buttons, and that's the power of Watson machine learning, which pretty much takes away all those issues and abstract so that you can take a model from development to production in a manner of few clicks. So the first step in that is to promote my asset, which is my random forest model, to a deployment space. So a deployment space is nothing but a project on the deployment or the production side. It's a space where you would promote all the assets, like it could be a model, it could be a pipeline, it could be data files. Basically anything that you would need to productionalize, you would promote all of them into your space. Now I can either promote my asset to a space that already exists, or I can just create a new space just to keep it separate. Now, since this project is around credit risk, I'm going to just name this credit risk space. I'm going to create a space which takes few seconds. And when the space is created, which I'll show in few seconds, I'll then promote my asset into that space. Okay, so now the space is created. I can choose to add any tags if I need to, but for now I'll just keep it blank. I'll promote my asset. So now what's really happening is Watson machine learning is taking the model from the development side and basically creating a copy of it onto the space. Now if I go to the space which I just created, I should be able to see that in my asset section, and here it is. And you can promote any number of models or pipelines to your assets. Right now I only have one, and this is the model I'm choosing to productionize. All I need to do is just click on deploy, which should give me options to the type of deployment I want. Right now I have two, online or batch. I'm going to choose online, which is basically I want to run my model on the data in real time. I can give it a name, so I can say random forest credit risk deployment, and I can give it a serving name. So a serving name is kind of uh, like an associated name so that it's easy to remember. So if you remember in any online deployment, what you get is called as an endpoint or a REST API, which is a uniquely generated alphanumeric, I think it's 16 to 20 characters in WML, which is really hard to remember. So in substitution of that, you can give it a serving name, something that's unique and something that's easy to remember. In this case, it's a credit risk deployment, so I'm going to name it credit risk. And when I click create, what's happening in the backend is WML is taking care of all that's necessary to deploy this model. So it includes things like making sure the right packages, the right resources, all of that is containerized in this WML pod in the backend, and it's going to deploy it. And just like that, in a matter of few seconds, we took a model from the project stage, which is in development, promoted it to the space, and then deployed it. So now if I open the deployment, I should be able to see the unique endpoint which I was just talking about, and here it is. So either you can use this unique endpoint to access this model, or you can use the serving name credit risk. The tool also gives you some sample code which you can use to get a sense of the schema on what the format of the data should be, the kind of authorization it requests, and how to really consume it. So you can use any of these code snippets. Now, how do you really know the model is really deployed and it's actually working as expected? Well, that's where you can test it out quickly. Either you can enter all these values individually, or you can enter it in the JSON format at once. I have already copied an example which complies with the format you saw in the previous tab. Now, as soon as I hit predict, assuming everything works, which in this case it did, it comes back with a response, and in this case it says no risk is the prediction for credit risk with a probability of 70%. And that's how easy it is to take a model from the development side and deploy it and be ready to consume in a matter of minutes using Watson machine learning.
This is very cool. And Rakshit, can you explain quickly what is the difference between an online deployment, which is basically what you just show us, and the other type of deployment, which is batch?
Yeah, sure. So an online deployment, as I mentioned, is something you use for real time. So it could be like, say, credit risk fraud. So every time you swipe a credit card or a credit, it basically sends that data into the model in real time to this API and scores it and gets a response. So basically every time you swipe a credit card, you want to know, or your bank wants to know, whether the transaction is legitimate or not, and you want to treat each of those transactions individually. A batch is more of something which you do offline. So say you collect data for over a few days or maybe even few weeks. It could be 100K, maybe a million rows, and something you run once in a while in batch. And that's the basic difference between real time or online versus batch. And there are multiple use cases and requirements where you need to make a call whether you want to use online or batch.
Very cool. And another question here, you deployed a random forest model done on a Jupyter notebook with scikit-learn. The process is exactly the same if you develop the model with Auto AI or SPSS modeler, or you use a different framework like a deep learning framework, it will work exactly the same way?
Yeah, I can even show, like, yeah, especially with Auto AI and even the others, it's the same procedure. The backend program and the environment might be different, but the procedure, the buttons to click, and the whole process, it's exactly the same. Yes.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Rakshit, for this demo. I hope this is helpful for everyone. It's the simplest way we have to put models into production. So I hope you get started right now and start deploying your models. Thank you all very much, and see you in the next episode. Thank you, Rakshit.
Thanks, Anand.